Lance Grimmer didn't trust anyone. Not after what happened. So when he hired his seventh maid in 6 months, he did what any billionaire would do. He installed cameras. Hidden ones. In every room where his 4-year-old quadruplets spent time. Aiden, Caleb, Mason, Logan. For identical boys who hadn't spoken a single word in 2 years. Not since the accident. Not since their mother. Lance had spent millions. Flown in specialists from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Boston Children's Hospital. Every expert with letters after their name told him the same thing. There's no physical cause. Give it time. Keep them in therapy. But something felt wrong. So he watched. And what he saw his new maid doing, a woman who could barely afford her own rent, made him call the police. But before she was dragged out of his mansion in handcuffs, his son spoke. One word, and it changed everything. But to understand what Lance saw on those screens and why it shattered everything he believed, you need to go back 6 weeks earlier, to the mansion where silence ruled. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I believe this story found you today for a reason. The Grimmer estate sat on 5 acres in Buckhead, Atlanta's wealthiest enclave. 30,000 square feet of Georgian architecture. Marble columns that rose 2 stories. Crystal chandeliers imported from Vienna. Manicured lawns that cost more to maintain each month than most families earned in a year. Worth $18 million. But inside, silence. Not the peaceful kind. The suffocating kind. Lance Grimmer was 38 years old and worth $4.2 billion. CEO of OpticCore, the facial recognition company that supplied surveillance systems to half the Fortune 500. He could identify a face in a crowd of thousands, track movement across continents. But he couldn't reach his own sons. Aiden, Caleb, Mason, Logan. 4-year-old quadruplets with identical gray eyes and identical silence. They'd spoken once. Back when Caroline was alive. Back before the accident. They'd babbled and laughed and called for mama like any other toddlers. But the day after her funeral, the words stopped. Just stopped. As if someone had reached inside them and flipped a switch. That was 2 years ago. 2 years of specialists flown in from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Boston Children's Hospital. Neurologists who ran tests and found nothing. Speech pathologists who tried therapy after therapy with zero progress. A psychiatrist from Harvard who spent 6 months observing them and concluded, selective mutism, trauma-induced. They'll speak when they're ready. Give it time. Time. Lance had given them time. And $15,000 per week per child in therapy sessions. $60,000 a week. $240,000 a month. Over 2 years, that was nearly $6 million. For silence. The boys had empty eyes. That's what haunted Lance most. They'd look at him, or through him, really like he was made of glass. Like they could see something beyond him that he couldn't reach. For pairs of gray eyes. For silent mouths. For little boys trapped in a language only they understood. Lance worked 14-hour days now. Easier than coming home to the quiet. Easier than sitting at the dinner table while his sons ate without a sound. Their forks scraping plates in a house designed to echo. The nannies quit, one after another. The silence is too much, the third one had said. The 6th housekeeper lasted 3 weeks before leaving a note on the kitchen counter. I can't help them. No one can. And maybe she was right. Caroline would have known what to do. Caroline had always known. She'd sung to them, played with them, understood their little signals and sounds before they even had words. But Caroline was gone. Killed in a thunderstorm on a night they'd fought about his work hours. You're never here, she'd said. And then she'd driven off angry, and the rain had been heavy, and a semi-truck hadn't seen her brake lights until it was too late. Lance only knew how to buy solutions. But you can't buy back the dead. And apparently, you can't buy back words either. So he did what he does best. He installed cameras. Hidden once. In the playroom. The bedrooms. The kitchen. The sunroom where the boys spent their afternoons staring out at nothing. High definition. Audio enabled. Cloud connected. He told himself it was necessary. I need to see what I'm missing. I need to understand. But the truth was simpler and sadder. He couldn't bear to be present. Couldn't bear to sit with them in their silence and feel the weight of his failure. So he watched from a distance. From his office. From his desk. For silent screens showing 4 silent boys. No sound. No laughter. Just the hum of the surveillance system. He needed help. Real help. So he made one more call. The woman who answered Lance's call was 28 years old, 5'3", with tired eyes and a warm smile. Raina Allison. She arrived for the interview in a second-hand blazer and shoes that had been resold twice. She needed this job. Lance could see it in the way her hands trembled when she signed the paperwork. For $1,500 a month. What Lance didn't know, it still wasn't enough. Raina worked 3 jobs. Weekends, she mopped floors at Piedmont Hospital. Thursday nights, she waited tables at a diner off Route 85. Total income, $7,200 a month. Her expenses ran $7,700. Nana Rose's memory care facility cost $6,800 alone. She was 3 months behind, $20,000 for $100 overdue. The final notice came last week. Pay by month's end, or her grandmother gets transferred to county care. Raina knew what county care meant. Understaffed. Patients left in hallways. No one remembered your name. So she took the job and prayed it would be enough. Her apartment in East Point was 30 minutes from Buckhead, but it might as well have been another planet. 400 square feet. Second-hand furniture. Cracks in the ceiling. But photos everywhere. Her grandmother. Her parents. And Danny. Always Danny. 6 years old with dark curls and eyes that never quite met the camera. Her baby brother. Raina had been 14 when it happened. Danny was autistic, nonverbal. Doctors said he'd never communicate. But Raina learned his language. Rhythm. Music. Gentle touch. She'd hum, and he'd rock in time. They had their own world. Until the day she wasn't there. She'd been working after school. Mrs. Patterson was supposed to watch Danny. But Mrs. Patterson fell asleep. Danny wandered. The pool gate was open. Raina found him floating face down. She pulled him out. Tried CPR. The paramedics worked for 20 minutes. Then one looked at her and said, "He's gone." Raina held his small body and whispered, "I should have been here." She made a vow that day. I'll never ignore a silent child again. So when Mrs. Chin showed her into the playroom on her first day and warned, "Don't get attached. Last Maid tried to hug one of the boys and got fired," Raina nodded. But she already knew she couldn't follow that rule. For identical boys sat in separate corners, playing alone, silent. Raina knelt to their eye level. "Hi, I'm Raina. I'm going to be cleaning here. But if you ever need anything, you just let me know, okay?" Silence. Then one boy, the one with a small scar on his chin, looked up. Their eyes met, and Raina saw Danny. That night, in her tiny apartment, she lit a candle and knelt by her bed. "Lord, I don't know why you put me in that house. But those boys are so lost. If you're asking me to help them, please guide me. I'm scared. I can't lose another child. Amen." Across town, Lance reviewed the surveillance footage. He noticed things. She knelt to the boys' eye level. Others had stood over them. She smiled even when they didn't respond. And while she cleaned, she hummed. Soft, like a lullaby. She won't last a week, he thought. But as Raina had watched Mason, she'd wondered something else. Were his eyes empty? Or just waiting? What Raina didn't know, Lance was watching everything. Raina spent the first week observing. She cleaned the playroom, the sunroom, the bedrooms. But mostly she watched. The boys had their own language, silent but intricate. They communicated through glances, through the brush of fingers when they passed each other toys. Aiden arranged blocks in precise patterns. Always the same order, always straight lines. Control, Raina thought. He's trying to control something in a world that took his mother. Caleb's lips moved constantly, humming songs no one could hear. Mason watched Raina. Always. His gray eyes tracked her across rooms. And Logan cried without sound, tears streaming down his face while he sat perfectly still. They were speaking, just not with words. On day 9, Raina was cleaning the playroom, humming the lullaby Nana Rose used to sing, the same one she'd sung to Danny. She didn't realize Mason had approached until she felt his presence beside her. He held a piece of drawing paper, edges wrinkled from his small fists. Raina knelt, looked at what he'd drawn. 4 birds in a nest. Crude, the way 4-year-olds draw, but clear enough. 3 birds huddled together. 1 bird separate, wings spread, flying away. Raina's throat tightened. That's your mama, isn't it? Mason nodded. She's watching over you, Raina said softly. Like a bird in the sky. She can see you, even when you can't see her. Mason's hand reached out, touched Raina's fingers. It was the first physical affection he'd shown anyone in months. Raina took the drawing, carefully folded it into an origami bird, something Nana Rose had taught her years ago. She placed it in Mason's palm. This one stays with you. So you remember, she's always close. Mason clutched it, brought it to his chest. He didn't let go for 3 days. Across town, Lance watched the surveillance footage. He saw the moment Mason touched Raina's hand, saw the origami bird, saw his son smile, actually smile, for the first time since Caroline's funeral. He called Mrs. Chun, the new maid. Raina, has she been following protocol? Yes, sir. She's wonderful. The boys actually smile now. I didn't hire her to make them smile, Lance said. I hired her to clean. He hung up. Then he upgraded the system, added audio monitoring. By week 2, Raina had developed a routine. She hummed while she worked, spoke to the boys as she moved through rooms. I'm wiping the windows now. The sun's so pretty today, don't you think? She never demanded responses, never pushed. She was simply present, and the boys responded. Aiden started handing her toys to put away. Caleb sat near her feet while she dusted, his silent humming syncing with her rhythm. Logan brought her his blanket, an invitation to sit, to stay. And Mason kept the origami bird in his pocket always, pulling out to look at it when he thought no one was watching. They followed her from room to room now, not speaking but engaged, alive in a way they hadn't been in 2 years. That night, Raina knelt by her bed. Lord, I see them healing. But Mr. Grimmer is watching me like I'm doing something wrong. What do you want me to do? Please, answer me. Silence. She waited, listened. Nothing. Finally, she whispered, I'll trust you, even in the quiet. Mason's eyes weren't empty anymore. Raina had noticed it by the end of week 2. They were searching, hoping, waiting for something he couldn't name, but desperately needed. But Lance wasn't seeing hope. He was seeing a threat. Week 3, Lance called Raina to his study. The room was all cold marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate. A massive desk, leather chairs, everything expensive, everything lifeless. Sit, Lance said. Raina sat, hands folded in her lap. You're spending time with my sons. Ah, yes, sir. They're often in the rooms I'm cleaning. You're talking to them. I talk while I work. I didn't think. I have therapists for that, Lance said. PhD-level professionals. Your job is to clean, not to play therapist. Raina's voice was quiet. I'm not trying to replace anyone, Mr. Grimmer. They seem happier when. Happier. Lance laughed, bitter and sharp. They haven't spoken in 2 years. Happiness doesn't fix that. Science does. What if they just need to be loved? The words hung in the air. Lance's hand slammed on the desk. Don't presume to tell me how to love my sons. You've been here 3 weeks. I've been fighting for them for 2 years. His voice broke. Do you know what it's like to lose your wife and watch your children disappear in his silence? Do you? Raina looked at him, really looked, and she saw it. He wasn't angry. He was terrified. Terrified of failing them. Terrified of losing them the way he'd lost Caroline. Terrified that no amount of money or control could save them. No, sir, she said softly. I don't. I'm sorry. Lance stood, turned to the window. Stay in your lane, Miss Allison. Clean the house. Don't engage with my sons beyond basic courtesy. If I see you overstepping again. He didn't finish. You'll fire me. I'll fire me. Raina walked back to the servants' hall, her hands shaking. She had 10 days until Nana Rose's payment was due. $6,800. Without this job, she had no way to pay it. County Care would take her grandmother, the woman who'd raised her after her parents died, the woman who'd held her the night Danny drowned. But the boys, they were finally coming alive. Mason carried the origami bird everywhere. Caleb hummed louder now, almost audible. Logan had stopped crying. Aiden smiled when she walked into the room. Walking away now would re-traumatize them. She knew it, felt it. That night, alone in her apartment, Raina whispered, God, what do I do? Silence. Lance stood in his study, staring at the surveillance monitors. For screens. For boys. Playing together now. Something they hadn't done in months. And in the corner of one screen, just visible, the edge of Raina's cleaning card. Lance's eyes were empty too. Just like his son's. Just like Danny's had been. He didn't know how to fix this. Didn't know how to reach them. He only knew how to control. To monitor. To manage. But you can't manage love. And somewhere deep down, he knew that. However, before we continue with what happened next, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. And like this video. My grandma says I can't have up to 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong. Let's show her the power of community. Don't let you be the reason we don't get up to 1,000 subscribers. Raina had 10 days to decide. Her job or her conscience. Day 24. 6 days before Nana Rose's payment was due. Raina obeyed. She cleaned. No humming. No talking. When Mason brought her the origami bird, she gently placed it back in his hand. No eye contact. When Caleb tried to sit near her feet, she moved to another room. When Aiden arranged blocks at her feet, she stepped over them. When Logan reached for her hand, she pulled away. The boy's confusion was immediate, visible. Logan began silent crying again, tears streaming. No sound. Mrs. Chun found Raina in the kitchen. What happened? The boys were doing so well. Mr. Grimmer gave me clear instructions. Mrs. Chun shook her head. That man is so broken, he can't see what's right in front of him. That night, Raina sat alone in her apartment. 400 square feet. Candles flickering. The photo of Danny on the side table. 6 years old. Dark curls. Eyes that never quite met the camera. She picked it up. 14 years old. That's how old she'd been. Coming home from her after-school shift at the grocery store. Mrs. Patterson was supposed to be watching Danny. But when Raina opened the door, Mrs. Patterson was asleep on the couch. The apartment door was open. Panic. She ran. Down the stairs. Across the courtyard. The pool gate was open. And there he was. Floating. Face down. In a shallow end. She screamed. Pulled him out. His body so small. So cold. She tried CPR. She didn't really know how. Just mimicked what she'd seen on TV. Pressing on his chest. Breathing into his mouth. Begging him to come back. The paramedics arrived. Worked on him for 20 minutes. Then one of them looked at her. He's been under too long. I'm sorry. Raina held Danny's small, wet body. Whispered through her sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have been here. Back to the present. Raina sat on her bed, tears falling. I couldn't save Danny. And now I'm walking away from those boys just like I walked away from him. She opened her Bible. Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you. She whispered, do you, God? Because I don't see the plan. I see 4 boys disappearing, just like Danny did. She knelt, hands clasped. God, I'm scared. If I help those boys, I lose my job. Nana Rose loses her home. But if I don't, I lose myself. I can't watch another child slip away into silence. I can't. Pause. Silence. Then quieter. So if this is what you're asking, if you're calling me to risk everything, then equip me. Please. Because I'm not strong enough on my own. And slowly, peace settled. Not an answer. Not a voice. Just peace. The kind that doesn't make sense, but feels like truth. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, Raina walked into the estate. Didn't go to the cleaning closet. Went directly to the playroom. For boys. Sitting apart. Silent. She knelt before them. I'm here, she said. And I'm not leaving. Danny's empty eyes haunted her. But Mason's eyes, waiting, hoping, those could still be filled. She didn't know Lance was watching. And he was about to see something that would change everything. Day 26. 4 days before the payment deadline. The storm rolled in just afternoon. Dark skies bleeding into black. Thunder rumbling like something deep and angry. Lightning splitting the clouds in jagged white streaks. Heavy rain drumming against the mansion windows, relentless and wild. The same weather as the night Caroline died. The boys felt it immediately. Somehow they knew. Mason began rocking violently, hands clamped over his ears, eyes squeezed shut. Caleb retreated to the corner, knees pulled tight to his chest, making himself as small as possible. Aiden lined up his toys obsessively. Over and over, the same pattern, hands trembling, desperately trying to force order into the chaos around him. Logan cried without sound, silent tears streaming down his face, his whole body shaking. Mrs. Chun found Raina in the hallway, wringing her hands. Should I call Mr. Grimmer? They've never been this bad. No, Raina said, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. Let me try something. She led the boys to the sunroom, where the rain was visible through the tall windows, but the sound was muffled, softer, less threatening. She sat cross-legged on the floor. The boys stood frozen several feet away, eyes wide with terror, their small chests heaving. Raina began humming, low and steady and warm. The lullaby Nana Rose used to sing to her when she was afraid. Peace like a river. Mason's rocking slowed, just slightly. He cracked one eye open, looked at her. Raina kept humming, her voice gentle, her body swaying in rhythm. She opened her arms wide. An invitation, not a demand, not a command, just an offer of safety. Mason hesitated, then crawled into her lap. Caleb followed, then Logan, then Aiden. For boys huddled against her, seeking shelter from a storm that wasn't just outside, but inside them too. Raina hummed a phrase from the lullaby, then waited. Silence. She hummed it again. This time, Caleb's lips moved, silent at first, just the shape of the melody forming on his mouth. She repeated the phrase once more. And this time, Caleb's hum was audible. Barely. A whisper of sound. But real. Tears streamed down Raina's face. She kept going, her voice never wavering. Logan joined, humming so softly it was almost nothing. Then Aiden, his hum shaky and uncertain but there. Then Mason pulled back slightly, looked directly at Raina, searching her face. His mouth opened. A sound emerged. Cracked. Hoarse. Broken from 2 years of silence. But a word. Mama. Raina's breath caught in her throat. Mama gone? Her voice broke. Yes, sweetie. She's gone. But she loved you so much. Mason's tears fell. You stay. Yes, I stay. Raina. Her name. He spoke her name. Then, like a dam breaking after years of pressure, the others joined in. Caleb. Raina. Logan. Raina. Aiden. Stay. For boys speaking for the first time in 2 years. Their voices small, broken, uncertain, strange even to their own ears. But real. So achingly, beautifully real. They clung to her, crying, speaking her name over and over like it was the only word that mattered. I'm here, Raina whispered, holding them tight, rocking them gently. I'm here. I'm not leaving. I promise. Through her tears, she prayed out loud. Thank you, God. Thank you. You heard them. You heard me. Mason's eyes were no longer empty. They were full of tears of confusion, of fear, of hope, of life bursting through after so long in darkness. But in his office across the estate, Lance Grimmer watched the entire scene unfold on his surveillance monitors. For camera angles, audio crystal clear, he saw Mason speak. He heard Raina, but he didn't see a miracle. He saw a woman cornering his traumatized sons during a crisis, exploiting their fear, forcing them into an emotional breakdown to position herself as their savior. His hands shook with rage. He reached for the phone. What Lance saw wasn't a miracle. It was a crime. Chapter 7, The Accusation. 20 minutes later, the boys sat close to Raina in the sunroom, finally calm. The storm outside had softened to steady rain. Inside, the boys whispered her name over and over like a prayer, like a song. Raina, Raina, testing the sound, tasting the words, learning their own voices again after 2 years of silence. The door slammed open. Lance stood in the doorway, face dark, jaw clenched tight, controlled rage radiating off him like heat. Step away from them. Raina looked up, startled. Mr. Grimmer, they... Step away. She stood slowly, carefully, hands raised, palms open. The boys looked confused, their newfound voices dying in their throats. What did you do? Lance's voice was ice. Sharp, cutting. They spoke. Mason spoke. They all. I saw what you did. He stepped closer, towering over her. I saw you corner them during a trauma response. I saw you manipulate them, exploit their fear. Manipulate. Raina's voice rose despite herself. I was comforting them. You forced them into a crisis state to make yourself look like a hero. Mason grabbed Raina's hand, his small fingers desperately tight. No. Raina, stay. Caleb's voice, small and cracking and new. Don't go. Lance froze for half a second. Hearing them speak should have filled him with joy, relief, hope. But all he felt was white-hot fury. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You've created dependency, attachment disorder, emotional manipulation. Raina's eyes flashed, her voice steady despite the fear. They needed someone to love them, Mr. Grimmer. Not manage them, not monitor them, not study them like subjects in an experiment. Love them. You don't get to tell me how to love my sons. Footsteps echoed in the hallway behind him. 2 police officers entered the sunroom, uniforms dark against the pale walls. Lance had called them before coming downstairs. Raina, Allison? Her heart stopped. Yes. You're under arrest for child endangerment and emotional manipulation of minors. What? No, this isn't. Cold metal snapped around her wrists. Handcuffs biting into skin. The boys erupted, screaming, desperate, terrified. Raina, Raina. Mason tried to run to her. Lance grabbed him, wrapped his arms around the struggling boy, and held him back. Mason fought like something wild, screaming until his voice cracked. Logan collapsed to the floor, sobbing so hard he couldn't breathe. Caleb's voice broke the air. Daddy, N.O. Aiden, louder than he'd ever been. Stop. 4 voices. 2 years of silence shattered in an instant. And all they could say was her name and their terror. Raina didn't resist the officers. didn't fight. But as they pulled her toward the door, she looked back at Lance one last time. You're so afraid of losing control, you can't see you're losing them. Get her out of my house. The officers led her through the long hallway, past Mrs. Chun, who stood frozen with her hand over her mouth, tears streaming, past the marble columns and crystal chandeliers, past all the cold, expensive beauty, out the front door into the rain that was still falling. Inside, the boys were hysterical, screaming, crying, reaching for someone who wasn't there anymore. Lance stood alone in the sunroom, their cries echoing through the mansion like ghosts. On the floor between them, trampled and forgotten, lay the origami bird Mason had carried for weeks. Crushed flat, the boy's eyes emptied again, like someone had reached in and turned off a light that had just started burning. The silence Lance had fought so hard to break came rushing back in, heavier than before, suffocating. But in the back of a police car, hands cuffed behind her, rain streaking down the windows, Raina wasn't angry. She closed her eyes, bowed her head, and prayed, and God was about to answer. Chapter 8. The Revelation. In the holding cell, Raina sat on a metal bench. Bail was set at $50,000. She had $340 in her bank account. The public defender was young, tired, already defeated. They're charging you with emotional abuse of a minor. If convicted, 2 to 5 years. I didn't hurt them, Raina said quietly. I love them. Unfortunately, the father's testimony will carry significant weight. He's a billionaire with resources. The defender trailed off. Not, Raina finished. Alone in the cell, she bowed her head. God, I don't understand. But I trust you. Thank you for letting me see those boys smile. Even if it was only for a moment. Amen. Back at the estate, the boys wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, screamed for Raina until their voices went hoarse. Lance paced his office, exhausted, desperate, unraveling. He called Dr. Brennan, the psychiatrist who'd been treating the boys for 18 months. They're regressing, worse than before. What do I do? This is common after attachment disruption, Dr. Brennan said smoothly. We'll need to increase sessions to daily. I could start tomorrow. Lance stopped pacing. Increase? They just spoke for the first time in 2 years, and you want to increase therapy? Mr. Grimmer, what happened was a trauma response, not true progress. Lance hung up. Something felt wrong. He pulled open the filing cabinet. 2 years of reports from Dr. Brennan's team. Thick folders. Dense clinical language. He'd trusted them. Paid them millions. He started reading. Page 47. Dated 18 months ago. Clinical Assessment Summary. Patient, Grimmer Quadruplets, Aiden, Caleb, Mason Logan. Age, 2.5 years. Diagnosis, selective mutism, psychosomatic origin, trauma-linked, maternal loss. Assessment, no neurological impairment. No developmental delay. No physiological barriers to speech. Prognosis, excellent with appropriate intervention. Recommendation, reduce clinical exposure, current therapy schedule overstimulating. Increase naturalistic social interaction, peers, non-clinical caregivers. Implement music therapy, play therapy. Trusted caregiver immersion, consistent, warm presence. Anticipated timeline, 4 to 8 weeks for initial speech recovery. Filed. Continue current protocol. Lance read it again. Anticipated timeline, 4 to 8 weeks. 18 months ago. They knew. They'd known for a year and a half. He pulled the financial records. Hands shaking now. Dr. Brennan's billing, $15,000 per week per child. 4 children. 18 months since this assessment was filed. Total billed, $2.88 million. For a condition they knew how to fix in 4 to 8 weeks. Lance grabbed his phone, dialed Dr. Brennan. Page 47 of your report from 18 months ago. Silence on the line. I'd have to review. You wrote that they could recover in 4 to 8 weeks with music therapy and a trusted caregiver. That was a preliminary assessment. You billed me $2.88 million for a condition you knew how to cure. Lance's voice was shaking with rage. You saw my sons as a subscription service. Mr. Grimmer, clinical standards require gradual. You let them suffer so you could keep billing me. Your sons received excellent care. My maid did in 3 weeks what you refused to do in 18 months. Lance hung up. He pulled up the surveillance footage. Watched Raina in the sunroom. Humming. Gentle. Present. Doing exactly what the report had recommended 18 months ago. Music therapy. Trusted caregiver immersion. Warm, consistent presence. She followed the protocol perfectly, and he'd had her arrested. Lance put his head in his hands and wept. What have I done? Lance had one chance to make this right. But first, he had to do something he'd never done. He had to kneel. The next morning, Lance walked into the police station. Exhausted, eyes red, but certain. I'm here to drop all charges against Raina Allison. The officer looked up from his desk. Sir, you filed a serious complaint. I was wrong. Completely wrong. Release her immediately. There's still the matter of bail. I'll pay it. Whatever it is. They brought Raina from the holding cell. She saw Lance standing in the lobby and braced herself for more accusations. More anger. Instead, he said quietly, Miss Allison, I owe you an apology. They sat on a bench in the station lobby. Lance's voice was raw. I reviewed my son's medical files. Dr. Brennan's team knew 18 months ago what was wrong. They knew how to fix it, and they chose not to. Raina's voice was barely a whisper. What? Money. They billed me millions for a condition they knew you could heal in weeks. He paused, hands shaking. You did everything right, and I punished you for it. Your sons are speaking now, Raina said. That's all that matters. No, it's not. His voice broke. I destroyed you to protect my pride. I need you to forgive me. Please. Raina looked at him, saw the guilt, the grief, the brokenness. She knew that weight, had carried it herself since the day Danny drowned. I forgive you, she said, not because you deserve it, but because I know what it's like to carry guilt. And I don't want that for you. Lance's tears fell. Thank you. He drove her back to the estate. The boys were in the playroom with Mrs. Chun. When the door opened, Mason looked up, saw Raina. Raina, all 4 boys sprinted across the room, tackled her in an embrace, sobbing, laughing, shouting her name over and over. I'm here, Raina whispered, holding them tight. I told you I'd stay. Lance stood in the doorway, watching. And for the first time, he saw what he'd been missing all along. Not control, not expertise, not management or monitoring or expensive solutions. Love. That evening, after the boys were asleep, Lance and Raina sat in the sunroom. Golden light streamed through the windows. I want to offer you a position, Lance said. Not as a maid, as family director. You'd oversee their care full-time. Salary is $120,000 a year, plus housing on the estate if you want it. Raina stared at him. Mr. Grimmer, you saved them. Let me give you the resources to keep doing that. Tears filled her eyes. I can pay for Nana Rose's care. I already did. The balance is cleared. She's staying at Sunrise as long as she needs. Why? Because you gave me my sons back. It's the least I can do. Over the following weeks, the mansion changed. Laughter echoed through the halls. The boys spoke in full sentences now, their voices growing stronger every day. Lance left work early to have dinner with them. Raina moved into the guest house on the property. And on weekends, Nana Rose visited, her face lighting up as the boys surrounded her, chattering endlessly. One afternoon, Raina sat in the sunroom reading to the boys. Lance sat nearby, not on his phone, not working, just present. Mason climbed into his lap. Daddy, listen. Raina's reading the bird story. The bird story? Mason pulled the origami bird from his pocket, worn now, creased, and soft from being carried everywhere. But intact. The one that flies away, Mason said, but always comes back. Lance looked at Raina. She smiled. The boy's eyes were no longer empty. They were full of words, full of laughter, full of life. Lance learned what no amount of money could buy. That love isn't a resource you manage. It's a presence you give. Raina learned that the faith she carried, even through loss, even through fear, was never wasted. And 4 little boys learned to speak again, not because of therapy, not because of credentials, but because someone loved them enough to risk everything. If this story touched your heart, I need you to know something. This channel needs you. We're a family here, not just viewers, not subscribers, a family. And our mission is to reach people who need hope, people who feel powerless, people who wonder if love still matters in a world that worships money and status. Help us reach them. Join our family by subscribing right now. Your support means everything. God bless you.